KZ Guide 2 here, and today's going to be an ultra-fast guide on how to replace the thermostat and housing on this 2014 Jeep Wrangler with a 3.6 liter. This Jeep has 95,000 miles on it, and it had a P0128 code. Wasn't getting above 160 to about 165 degrees on the coolant temp, and the heat was not working very well when it was idling. First step is we're going to drain the coolant out of it. Make sure you let it cool down and that your hoses aren't hard before you do this. You could skip this step if you don't mind making a mess, but grab yourself a drain pan, a pair of pliers, or sometimes I like to use a little socket like this. And at the bottom of the radiator on the passenger side, you're gonna have a little petcock that, see, this little socket fits on there perfect. You can see I've also put a hose on the nipple. Ooh, so it doesn't shoot all over the place, but it seems to be doing that anyway. So be careful of that, but this is why it's very important. I'm getting pissed on here, the hunk of shit. Well, you can see having that hose on there was useless because it ended up coming out of the threads anyway and then running down this whole piece of plastic and just spewing out across the whole entire front of the car. So using a piece of cardboard like this would be much better. And once you have it draining, you take the cap off to break the vacuum, and then you can go ahead and drain the rest of that out. Yeah, that definitely works a little bit better to keep the mess down. With that draining, we can tear into this now. You pull up this cover and a couple grommets on the front, and once it's up like that, you pull it off the back. So it attaches on these rubber. If you spray these with like a little silicone or grease, that helps out in the future. And then these little towers right here. Remove the intake air duct, loosen your hose clamps, 8mm and 8mm, or you could use a flathead, and then two 10mm bolts on the front. You got this hose sitting in here too, and then that just slides up out of your way, but you do have an intake air temperature sensor right there too. So just squeeze in on that, and that pops right off. Now you use some slip joints or hose clamp pliers to remove this spring clamp, slide that back, pop the hose off, and then two 10mm on this thermostat housing. Hopefully, since that was draining, not too much coolant will come out of this. You can see still a little bit in there. Not a big deal. I got the pan down there. Got the part out, and you can see this is definitely a factory one. Big difference in the spring size and design on them a little bit, but the most common issue with these is they get older, the spring going through all the thermal cycles gets worn out, and so it gets weaker and starts opening sooner, or sometimes debris in the cooling system can get stuck and jam it open. But very common for at 100,000 miles a thermostat to just start opening a little bit too soon, and that's why we are replacing it. Here's a good look at the new one, and yeah, seems like a quality part. It's actually made by Motorrad. Like usual, I'll try to plug links to everything I used in this video down below, so check that out, including a code reader. As you can see, draining the coolant was an optional step. If you were in a jam, you could just take all this off and let the coolant drain down onto the ground or into a big pan. No big deal, and clean it up. Next step is going to be getting a whizzer wheel or a wire brush and cleaning off the corrosion where the thermostat seats. Very important to do that, otherwise you're going to end up with leaks. And then I like to take a little bit of grease and rub it on the block too. So I'm going to do that now and bolt the new one in, put the hoses back on, put this all together, and then we're going to burp out the coolant, so I'll chime back in with you at that point. With all that buttoned up, make sure to close your petcock down below, and then you're ready to top off the radiator. Should take about 1.5 gallons or so, maybe 2 gallons. I like to use this Lyle funnel kit. It's very convenient for reducing the mess, and this fits like a large array of radiators, so very convenient. Again, I'll drop a link for that. After this has stopped gurgling, you can go ahead and start the engine up. Put the blower on high, full hot, and it's convenient if you wedge a little rod between the gas to try to bring the RPMs up to about 2K or so. Let that get up to temp and burp out all of the air bubbles. And remember, you do have a bleed screw on top of the thermostat housing too. So I'm going to crack that loose right now and see if any air escapes from that. Now I just shut it off because the level started rising up, and that tells me that there's air in the system. And so you don't want to boil that over. I did, while it was running, crack that bleed screw loose, let all the air out, and until coolant comes shooting out, then tighten that little screw back down. But you can see now, just sitting here, this level is it's starting to go back down, so I'm gonna let that go down. So I'm gonna start it back up now, blip the throttle a couple times in an effort to try to push that air back over to here. Since we already cracked that bleed screw once, let's see how that works out. Any bubbles come out of there when I did that?
The bubbles right now, I can see it.
You see, so now some of that air got jolted up and it's finding its way back to here. You got to get all that air out. You see the levels climbing it up again though, and I don't want to boil it over, so Brett's gonna go shut it off. Yep, shut it off. Oh, almost gonna boil over. Oh my gosh. All right, it didn't. You see that? So that's why this funnel is very convenient. I gotta find out if there's another bleed port on this darn thing. Another method is you can massage the hoses, and you'll see this will help get some of those air bubbles out of there. And even another method that I don't have it here, but if you put this system under a vacuum, they have a special kit. Put the whole system under a vacuum before you fill it. That really reduces this problem. Some cars you have this problem, and some you don't. All right, this thing's being extremely stubborn. What happens is we're not getting any heat, so we know this heater core is full of an air pocket. And since these hoses come up so high that air gets trapped in there, it could be a partially blocked heater core too. But what I'm going to do now is take this off, and then we're going to put the rad cap on and go drive it and hopefully push that hot coolant into the heater core and get some of that air out of here. What's nice about this funnel kit is you can squeeze the upper hose just a little bit, put the plug in, let go of the squeeze, and then when you take this off, you'll have no mess at all, which is very convenient. That's why they call it spill-free, and we can put our cap on and drive this now. I pretty much tried all the tricks I know. Again, having the tool to put the system under a vacuum would have been great. We even tried jacking the front end a bunch, because that will sometimes help the air come out of the heater core and come up to the radiator, but that wasn't even working, so I'm going to drive it and rev the piss out of it now. All right, that worked. We took it for a good spin, ran it red line through a few gears, got that hot coolant up into the heater core. It's blowing hot as can be now. I just let it cool down, so I'm going to take the radiator cap. Be very careful that you don't shoot yourself in the face. Slowly release that. Once it's cooled down and has no pressure, I'll put the funnel back on here and we'll see if there's any more air to burp out. Quite simply place her back on there and then lift your rod, and boom, look at all that air coming out. Beautiful. 15 minutes later, I've been massaging the hose too. We got all those bubbles out. So same thing to get this off, squeeze the hose, drop it in, let go, and you shouldn't have a mess. Any residual air in the system will work its way out over time with thermal cycles. Make sure to top your coolant bottle off too, and you are done. Sorry this video ran on so long, but you know, doesn't always go so smooth. So drop it a thumbs up if it helped you. Consider leaving a comment or subscribing to the channel or checking out those links down below. Appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you in another video.